start with this last special interest group. I won't take up too much of your time. Over to you.
Thank you so much, sir. We'll start off with the first speaker. I'd like to welcome Sri Balaji Chakravarti. Balaji has been a startup sales leader right from the beginning of his career of 20 plus years of experience in the IT industry. He has worked in 3 startups, has introduced several product services into new markets, has set up sales engines for a variety of services and products, innovated and scaled a telesales model to sell software services on the phone, acquired the first customer for his organization, and has built sales organizations from scratch many times over in his career in multiple markets. He is qualified mechanical engineer from Crescent Engineering College and has an MBA in marketing from Institute for Technology and Management. Pleasure having you here, sir.
Hey, thanks everybody for making it this evening. And selling a business idea is a very large topic. I mean, it's going to take days and days for us to talk. But what I want to focus is the sales aspect of selling a business idea. So let's don ourselves as salespeople, and when we go out and talk to the prospects, 2 prospects here being a VC as well as the customer. So how are we supposed to spin a sales process around that is what I'm going to cover, because all we have is 15 minutes. So to do justification to that, this is what I think we can do today. So selling a business idea. So typically what happens is you have an idea that you want to monetize, and you believe personally that this would be a disruptive product, and you want to launch your startup, and you want to monetize this from multiple sources, maybe take investments from VCs, get revenues from customer, so obviously go out and sell. So what would you do in that? So let's look at the concept of idea from others' perspectives. So their motives, their perspectives, their experiences, and the way they evaluate are completely different from that of yours. So everybody, as we are talking how it would work, would also be thinking internally on how this is not going to work. So you will have to capture all their possible objections, what might be going within their mind, and should be able to articulate and should be able to do your pitch when you talk to them. So the primary motive here is HTIB, how do I benefit, is what everybody thinks about it. And this is slightly different in a group environment, where when multiple people would think their HTIBs would be completely different from the others, because each one would look at their benefits from their perspectives only. So when you are selling a business idea, you will have to identify all possible sources, all possible benefits that would come from multiple people, and should be able to articulate that for them. So understanding buyer behavior is very, very important here. So as I told you earlier, capturing objections from their point of view and then answering them ahead of time would help you sail through. So when you start also talking about what is going on in their mind and give an answer to that prior to them asking you the question, they start thinking, hey, this is something that is going to work for me. So when you look at people buying, let's say, a product, they look at the benefits in the features that you would offer. They would look probably at a demo. It could be a time box demo, it could be a feature box demo, where there is a lot of engagement which is at a high level. I mean, people really feel it. And the return on investment. These are probably 3 of the many motives or many drivers which will make people buy products. When it comes to services, it is the technology or the industry experience or similar experiences where there is a little bit of medium engagement. It's not very high, because people still have to imagine that what has worked for someone else will work for them too. And the execution and delivery process is something that is very important here in terms of taking a decision. The price versus the problem, the perceived price that they're willing to pay for the problem that it would solve would be the decision making here. When it comes to an idea, it's you. So when people look at it, when you go out to the first few customers and say, hey, I've got this idea, I've got to make this, I'm going to make this work. Let it be VCs, let it be customers, because there is nothing for them to see, there's nothing for them to feel. Very, very low engagement here. So people will think, how will you as a person be able to do this? because everybody has ideas. If you think you have the best idea in the world and you go to companies and talk to those people who you're trying to solve problems for, it is not surprising. They will say, hey, I've thought about this 10 years ago. Everybody has an idea, but only a few make an idea into reality, and those are the guys who come into the entrepreneurial world and start companies and become big. So no idea is extremely unique. People would have thought about it, but only you have the vision to wake up from your dream and to go out and talk to people, pitch, and then start a company. So experience and ability to execute your idea, which is very important in the next aspect. So for example, if you are, let's say, into manufacturing, suddenly you want to go into financial services, people aren't going to believe you because you do not have the expertise to implement it. You can go and say, look, I'm going to hire a person who will come there, who will be able to do this for me. But the moment your idea goes to that person, the idea is lost. It's no longer yours. You do not have the IP intellectually. So at least when you want to start, pick up an idea that is sort of proportional to where your experience lies in, so that you will have a better chance of survival in terms of your idea being accepted. And your depth of experience from customer's point of view. So what is the issue that it's trying to solve? And how deep do you know the issue? And what sort of solution do you have in solving the problem for them? So how do you differentiate? Do you have something unique at all that others will not be able to enter that fast? It could be a depth of experience in a particular industry, which obviously will take time for people to get there. Or you say that, okay, this is going to be a very high investment venture, and I will be able to invest so much and would be able to get so much of customers that others will not be able to do it. And the ability for you to hold fort is very important. The next thing is, I found a need ahead of time which no one else has found. And at this point in time, there's a lot of demand, but people are not aware that this demand is there and I'm going to fulfill that. That's probably another differentiator. And the third thing is, how unique and non-replicable is your idea? So do you have any patents at all? Or have you applied for patents? Because when you apply for a patent, it is difficult to replicate. Then experience of the early adapters, of those few prospects who become customers. Maybe you might want to do a few free POCs and let the customers talk about how they have benefited and how many of those have been converted into paid customers today and their experiences. And most importantly, the team that you will feel around you, that, okay, this is not just me, a set of people that have joined along with me who's going to do this for you. So these are a few things that you can talk about. Segmenting your buyers. So it's no point in going to the top VC in the country and saying that, hey, look, I have this brilliant idea, why don't you fund me? So the idea is, it is not because they are large. They, of course, do a lot of funding. But are they interested in this kind of a work? Do they invest in these types of industries? What stage of companies do they invest in? What sort of funds do they work on? So you will have to understand all of that and shortlist only those, because otherwise you will be unnecessarily going around and wasting your time. In terms of customers, who are your customers? What sort of business problems do they face? Segment it, identify the pain point, and then what sort of business benefits your idea is going to solve for them. You will have to convey the message of gain. What would they gain if they take your service? And the pain, what would they lose if they do not take your service or an idea? So those are the things you will have to look at. So how do you get your first few customers? So first of all, go and segment and find your ideal target profile, your prospect profile. So identify the set of people and then go there and focus on business benefits. Never pitch features. Nobody is interested in that. Talk about how your idea is able to satisfy a set of problems that the industry has, and how you as an individual with your capability would be able to execute and make it happen. And reach out to your friends who are the typical angel customers that you can get. So your friends and earlier contacts who worked with you in the past, who know that you can do this, or somebody who can refer you to some other customers. That's the best model any startup will have. And then go get the first few. Ideally, even with a little bit of a payment, you can get to do a POC. It's awesome. But if not, at least go to those people, because they have a vested interest to make you successful. So they will spend time and get something for themselves and also make you successful, and it would be a good referral point for you. And then after that, once you go to those, and if you do not have any friends, for example, if you don't have any number of years of experience in the industry where you say that I do not have colleagues of mine, I'm just a kid out of college, then you will have to go out in the market, reach out to people, find a person who's willing to sponsor you, and to reach them you have to use multi-touch point strategy. So you will have to reach them by use of marketing, let's say for example Facebook, Twitter, multiple modes. You will have to do a good website, pull people in, you will have to enable a calling engine, call out to customers, talk to them, explain your benefits, and then do a small pilot and then scale it out by customer referrals or word of mouth. That's it. Any questions? Okay, so the best point is, if you have an idea, it is great, but if you are a fresher, you do not have any idea, obviously that comes with a lot of capability that you can bring to the table in terms of your intelligence. So you say, okay, for example, if you have come in with a very new product that is going to, a software product for example, that you will launch in the market, obviously your credentials of you being able to code something, you'll have to show something ahead of time. So at least it's not that anybody can go and say, look, I've got an idea, I'll be able to build this up. If this person is able to show something saying that this is what I have done, maybe my project, maybe my thesis, and this has been accepted so much by the universities, I've got some awards. So now with this idea which has been accepted by the market, I want to monetize it. Me as an individual, I will not be able to do it, but since I have done this, this is so-called my IP, and if you give me money, for example, with the VCs, I will be able to hire people to make this as a good product and sell. To the first few customers, I know that this can solve a problem that you have. So give me a shot, I will try it out, I'll make it successful and I'll make it a model. Any other questions?
How do we motivate the sales force, who is seeing a lot of new products and services coming out from our own company? How to improve the conviction level of sales force to drive the sales through these activities? I'm talking about selling to a customer.
You're saying that as a company, you are coming up with multiple products.
Our own company and competitors are coming up with various products. The sales force is confused. What is the level of conviction probably a sales guy can have in terms of the benefits and features of a particular product? How quickly we can train them? I'm talking about sales force motivation to do that.
Okay. See, the experience that I've had in the past with dealing with variety of sales force is that they are not confident about anything that the company has. Okay, it's not to blame the salespeople. See, as founders, when all of you start the company, you know that there is something that you're trying to do that no one else in the world can. It may not be true. It could be an over-aggressive imagination, but you believe that so well. So that is why when you go out and sell, or when the founders go out and sell, it is not that they are great salespeople. Many people do not even. I've seen many people who are not even able to speak eloquently, but still when they go there, they are able to close deals because the passion, the belief, and the confidence that comes out from them to the customer. So the customer believes that this is something that is too good. When that knowledge first has to go down to the salesperson, then obviously the passion will come in, and once the passion comes in, they will be good storytellers, and they will be able to go and talk to the customer with the same confidence that yes, this is a product that you should be buying. So what happens psychologically, if you look at when they do not know too well on the product, when they talk to the prospect, they always have a fear, hey, is this customer going to ask me a question that I do not know the answer for? And once it is over, oops, I've done well. But what happens is the means to an end, that is the conversation that is going towards the closure doesn't happen. The conversation becomes the end. So they're happy that they've come out after speaking well. But when the knowledge and the passion goes in completely, the mood changes into, I have something excellent to offer, why aren't you buying, idiot? When that passion goes out and when people start talking, then they become good salespeople, and customers also will be able to get that passion and start listening to them. So the knowledge and the belief that this is the best product in the world, and that comes only with the knowledge impartment. So it's not that as the training sessions also need to be very clearly done. It's not half-a-day session where you come and talk something and then go away. This is the product, man. So the assumption that I know this product so well out of so many years of experience because it's my company, that cannot be translated in half a day. So it has to be a structured, layered training engagement that needs to happen from the CEO to the salesperson, and over time this person picks up and starts doing well. Did I answer your question? Anything else? Yes. There's this whole, I mean, I'm sure he'll cover some of those. So let me. So the thing is that there's this with voice over IP coming in as a very good medium to reach out to the US. You have a lot of a concept which is picking up in India, inside sales, that is coming up. So using a telesales engine, using a marketing engine, there are many companies that are successfully doing this. So you can. That's one day of topic. So unless you have anything specific to talk, you have any specific aspect on which you would like for me to talk, I can. No, you will be able to sell sitting here small deals. Anything less than $30,000-$40,000, you do not have to go and meet the customer face to face. You can still close it. But when you need to scale it out, you have to go and meet them. Because they expect to see a person. You have to put a face to the voice. But the smaller deals you can always close on the phone. Any other question? All right, guys, thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Balaji. This is a session on which these speakers will talk on their areas of specialization. Now we get on to the next speaker, Radhika Menon, over to you.
I'd like to thank Sri Balaji for that excellent speech. Moving on, we have Ms. Radhika Menon coming up next. She's a postgraduate in labor studies with over 23 years of experience spanning verticals in service industry with proven track record in the areas of operations, training and development, and quality of service in reputed organizations such as NIIT, Carvey Consultants, Hutchison Max, GE Capital, Emphasis, First Source, and Sutherland. She successfully created processes and systems in the various assignments and carved models for improving efficiency and customer satisfaction with focus on developing teams to ensure excellence in delivery. If I could request you to please take over, ma'am.
First and foremost, thank you so much for choosing to sit here at this point in time today. I know we are running late in the sessions. The topic I was given today to speak is a coaching model Gita that I use. Now, without an understanding of what is executive coaching, I think to talk about a model wouldn't make much sense. So let me share with you whatever time I have. I would rather talk about what is executive coaching. Any one of you here exposed to executive coaching, has been coached or is a coach? Anybody here? Well, so so we'll talk about. And by the way, yeah, I have a kind of a coachee of mine sitting here, and he refuses to acknowledge that he's exposed to coaching. That's Venkatesh. And the three of us speakers today have only him as common between the three of us. We didn't know each other till we met here today, and all of us know Venkatesh. So I'd like to acknowledge Venkatesh for excellent networking skills. Anyway, coming back to coaching. So, this word mentoring and coaching is used in the same breath. Right now, there is some mentoring sessions going on. So the words mentoring and coaching goes in the same breath. And a lot of people say, what do you do? And say, I do mentoring and coaching. Even more interesting is when I meet people, they ask me, so what do you do? So I say, I do modeling, I do process modeling, and I do coaching. So they catch on the word modeling. Modeling, this one, and there is that look of disbelief. Then I have to go and explain what I do is process modeling. So, oh, you also do coaching. Yes, I do coaching. My son is trying to do his entrance exam. So do you think you can help him with math? So then I have to go on explaining as to, what coaching I do. So there is, I can see this question on a lot of faces here, what is coaching? So mentoring mentor is actually name of a person who lived in Greek mythology. So if you have seen that sheet, mentoring sheet, you see those Greek figures, those of you who logged in, or those of people who filled up. So a mentor is a person who is a very wise old man who lived in Greek mythology time. And Ulysses, when he left for his long trip to conquer the world, left his son Telemachus in mentor's care, to be looked after, to be taught, to be grown, so that Telemachus would grow to be a strong person, a strong king, and that is called mentoring. So mentoring usually is a longer term event. As parents, we do mentor our children. In some of the organization, there is a proper mentoring program, but most most of us would have had mentors as we grew in our organization, or we still may be having mentors. So that is mentoring for you. Now let's come to executive coaching. What is executive coaching? The other day somebody said, oh, you must be earning a lot of money. I said, why? So they said, executive coaching is very expensive and only CEOs and CXOs do that. Now that's a myth, the second part. Executive coaching is expensive because it is extremely difficult to get a good qualified coach. There are very few. So it goes at a premium. So what is coaching? Coaching, the word coach is actually a place in Hungary. It's a place called Coach, where they made the first carriage in which people used to travel pre-Victorian era. So what did the coach do? The coach took people from place A to place B safely. Okay? So that's exactly, and that word coach started getting used as a slang in universities in Europe and in UK and Europe for professors. I said the professor takes you from whatever C minus level to your A minus or A plus. That is where you want to be. So the coach takes you from where you are to where you want to be safely. Okay, so that is the basic definition of coaching, right? What is executive coaching, or what is business coaching? Coaching started with sports. All of us know about, the sports coaches, who coaches Indian team for cricket, who coaches hockey, who coached PT Usha, who coached, so coach, especially with PT Usha, the coach factor became quite known. People knew that, sports people have coaches. So somebody said, why is that Nambiar can't run? Yeah, Usha runs and gets, medals and creates record. Why can't Nambiar run? Simply because he is not the runner. He is not the athlete. He is the coach. His job is to make sure that Usha gets her nutrition on time, in the right amount, gets up at so-and-so time, make sure that she does her practice, keeps her health in check, etc., etc., and pushes her, be with her and pushes her. That's exactly what an executive coach would do if you were to engage a coach. The father of executive coaching is a person called, largely accepted as a person called Timothy Galloway. He is actually he used to be the tennis team captain in Harvard College. And he realized, and then he took up meditation, and then he realized that there is something called an inner voice. If you can, get that inner voice to listen to what you want, a lot of things can happen. And that is what he brought into his tennis coaching. Okay, so if you, those of you interested not only in tennis but also in improving yourself, there's a beautiful book called The Inner Game of Tennis. And there's a series called The Inner Game of Work or The Inner Game of Golf, but the concept is the same, because all of us, have you noticed when you're starting something, there's that little voice that says, don't do it. Ippo venda. That little voice? So Timothy Galloway's method talks about how do you handle that little voice. Okay? Then gradually he found he was coaching more business executives than sports people, because business leaders also had the same challenge. Especially in the top positions, they don't have people who will challenge them, question them, and turn around and show another perspective. A CEO or CXO typically has your yes men around, right? That's where an executive coach comes in. So as a coach, it is very important to do two things. And trust me, being trained as a coach makes you a better person. Because the most important attribute for a coach is to be non-judgmental. And that's a tall order, trust me. It's a very tall order to be not opinionated and non-judgmental. Because as a coach, you have no business to judge your coachee. Your job is to make sure that the coachee goes through the process of coaching, and the coaching is a process, and hence there are models. And make sure that the coachee gets to the goal where he or she wants. The coach is responsible for the process, and the coachee is responsible for putting in the work to achieve the goal. So this is as in a nutshell as I can put about coaching. Now, there are various models of coaching. The most popular, those of you who have done some Google search or have done some reading, management reading, etc. The most popular one is called GROW, which is popularized by Sir Wetmore, who is a big, famous, world-famous coach. So, as a part of my, my training and the academics involved to get credentialed as a coach, I had to craft my own model of coaching, right? So the reason why they ask you to do is because then they are sure that you understand the concept of coaching thoroughly. Otherwise, you will not be able to make a model, right? So my model is inspired by the Bhagavad Gita, which is an ancient Indian literature. Often, I am not looking at the religious aspect of it, but spiritual as in terms of, it talks about the mind. So I think Lord Krishna was the first coach in the in history, because he's done a beautiful job. If you were to look at Bhagavad Gita, from chapter 1 to 6 is nothing but pure coaching, because Lord Krishna doesn't tell Arjuna what to do. He is constantly questioning him, why are you here? So my model is based on Bhagavad Gita, and I'd like to quote Albert Einstein. What he talked about Bhagavad Gita is what you see on the screen. And I had to research quite a few books, primarily Aurobindo's commentary on Gita, Krishna, the Man and His Principles by Osho, and few other translations of Gita by the Westerners. So huge lot of research. So at the end of that, my model looks something like this. So the first thing is to identify the goal. If a coachee comes to me, the first question is, what is your goal? And trust me, a lot of times, what you think is a goal might not be your goal. So that is where you do a check on a territory versus the map. Just like Arjuna, who wanted to go stand in the middle and look at the layout and see where he is exactly and what does he wants to do. So the territory versus map is checked, and the first stage in goal, all the goals are crystallized. It's not that I want to do 30 lakh turnover next year. Why should I do 30? Why is it not 25? Why is it not 50? Why is it not a crore? So this is a process which has to be very, very carefully done, because then you work towards that goal, right? Once the goal is crystallized, then you have to examine, is the intent there or not? Do I want to do 30 lakhs because my neighbor did 25 lakhs? Okay. What is the intent for that goal? And have you got it crystallized, clear inside of you? The next stage is transformation, because from where you are to get to the goal, there are certain transformations that you may have to do. to your business, to yourself, to your team, the way you interact with your customers, your suppliers, etc. Right? So that is a transformation. And the last is action. Right? And coaching is normally will not exceed a maximum a year of engagement. Normally it's about 3 to 6 or 8 months. In cases where there is very high, very, very senior people, it could go up to a year because the coach and the coachee meets once a month or so. So that's how coaching progresses. So my model of coaching goes through this flow of goal, intent, transformation, and action. So that's the Gita for you. So primarily in this session, I've tried to talk more about coaching and executive coaching than the model itself, because it's important to understand coaching before you understand the different models in that. I'd be happy to take any questions at this point in time.
How long is the engagement model? I mean, is it
Coaching? See, my typical experience is about most coaches say 10 to 12 sessions, okay? And the gap between the sessions are primarily dependent on the seniority of the person, the time available, but minimum gap is about 10 days, okay? So my experience is, after the 6th and 7th session, it becomes more on action, and the person normally gets on an auto mode, and then you come back after say about a month and a half or so and do. So typically it is about 8 to 12 sessions, I would say, across 3 to 6 or 8 months. Yeah, and coaches charge by sessions. So the standard rate in India today is about $200 up per session. Let's not look at the dollar value at this point in time. So around 55 rupees is what we normally calculate for billing. So anything between $200 to $550, $600 is the going rate. But a lot of people pay out of their pocket to get coached. And typical people who come to me are also mid-career executives. People who say about 10, 12 years, and then they don't know whether they should change jobs or start something on their own, or if they're changing jobs, what kind of changes they should do. So did I answer your question about it? Yeah, the face-to-face, Skype, telephone, the three different modes of doing it. A lot of people prefer Skype because you can see each other.
I have a question. Do you do an evaluation at the end of your coaching?
No, the evaluation is done by the client and himself. And when there is corporate engagement, we discourage evaluating, because again, that's against the principles of coaching of being judgmental. But they track their regular performance, and the reported numbers are about 40 to 70% increase in personal performance indexes. I mean, in performance indexes, not just personal. So it's about 40 to 70%. So return of investment is considered extremely high, higher than your traditional corporate training programs. So that's a study what they say. International Coaching Federation is a body which credentials. So you can Google that. They have a coach directory which is worldwide. There are about 26 coaches who are professional certified coaches in India with ICF, and few ACC, that is Associate Certified Coach. So there is a coach directory, and a lot of times we have a problem of uncoaching people, because a lot of people who they think that coaching is about giving gyan. So there's been a lot of fair amount of damage done, and we got to go and undo that damage. So when you choose your coach, please look for the credentials, especially when you're paying high amounts. That's what I would say.
Where are the coaches coached?
The coaches have mentor coaches. So those are the master coaches, and they are tough. It's real tough love. I have a mentor coach who is thankfully moved from Bangalore to the US now. So otherwise, he was like, he used to keep making me write articles so that I would read more. And so, yeah, coaches have to be coached. So no matter how senior the coaches go through a mentor coach session once in a while, just to make sure that you are following the process that you're. It's like driving car. You find it very difficult in the beginning. You got to listen. You have to listen. It's called powerful listening. So it's not just the words. It's also body language. I did a whole research on micro expressions so that my sons don't like me anymore. I say, you're lying. Why? Your micro expression tells that you're lying. So there's a lot of listening that has to be done. So it's like when you start driving car, you need to do the gears, but as you practice it, it becomes a part of you. Yes. There are 3 hands are there, so let's.
One by one.
How do you measure the results? So we encourage people. How am I doing for time?
No, you can. Take a minute or two. Yes,
Sure.
slightly overshot. That doesn't matter.
Yeah,
No.
sorry.
Right,
So,
doesn't matter.
measure is we encourage, or rather I as a coach mandate that the coachee keeps a journal. My other work, the other part, I do processes and matrices. I'm a measurement person, I'm a measurement freak. But in coaching, it doesn't work that way. Coaching, the measurement is done by the coachee. If my sales figures, if I'm a salesperson or if I'm a CEO, these are the areas I want you to improve in numbers, it should impact those numbers.
Next question, yes.
Yeah. Right. Right. Mhm. Right. So you use the word mentor. So if you need to mentor, then you need those vertical specific competencies for 2 things, to advise and to mentor. But to coach, it's a plus to have business experience. Like I have done PNL, I have managed a site of about 2,500 people. So it has helped me. But I have a peer group who's there's a coach who is a pure finance person but is coaching across. Because I would encourage you to do a little bit more research on what coaching is, and then you will understand. Because a coach is not supposed to give you a solution. A coach is a person who will push you and make you look at the, change your perception, your angle of thought, and find solutions yourself. So sometimes they say it is better not to know your business. Correct. You answered your question.
Last question out there.
Well, I am a coach. I am a coach here, there. Do you think I was a good coach? Though I didn't engage with you as a coach. So, yeah, I love startups. I love startups. They have no money, lot of enthusiasm, lot of passion, and they'll do exactly what you're directing them to do. Because they just want to get it done and, be there.
What he was specifically asking was, do you give heavy discount for startups? I know it.
Venkatesh.
No, I keep talking.
Yeah. So he's my business manager. You can, you can contact me through him. Thank you for your very patient listening, and you have some more, very interesting person to speak about the United States of America next. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Radhika. Now we'll get on to the next speaker. Interestingly, he'll tell you how New York City is. I heard him last night. Probably you can throw that into Prakash. Over to you.
Well, thank you so much, ma'am. That was a very interesting session from your side. Moving on to the last and final speaker of the day, we have Mr. Prakash Iyer. Please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for having me here. I was asked to kind of talk about the challenges of setting up business in the U.S. And this was actually a workshop I conducted in Thai Kerala in August this year. And that was actually a workshop, so it was a fairly large extended session. So I'm trying to cramp up everything in a couple of slides. Hopefully I succeed. And just to give you a background of my company, we're based in New York, New Jersey, I'm sorry, and I'm a Thai charter member in Thai, New York. We basically manage the back office operations for all companies in the US. And interestingly, in the last couple of years, we've kind of tied up with a lot of companies in India who've shown active interest in setting up operations in the US. And it's given us a lot of knowledge and experience in kind of managing the Indian companies having US subsidiaries or US branches in, and one of the kind of some of the learnings which I've come across is what I'm actually trying to put together in this slide or these slides. So without further ado, let me get going. So one of the questions that typical entrepreneur in India has is like, there are certain basic questions and myths. One of them is, do I need to be a citizen? Do I need to be a resident in that country in order to form a company? Do I, can I just establish a company in one state and it's okay with, it operates in all the 50 states? Is it a very time-consuming, expensive process? US is a very different country when it comes to doing business compared to India. It's the first thing is it's not time consuming, it's not expensive. You can form a company in 48 hours in most of the states. You don't have to be a resident, you don't have to be a citizen, you could be a completely an outsider trying to form a company in the US, and that's fine, because US is always open for business in that sense. The only difference is the second point where, I'm just quickly kind of talking about this, is that in India, when you form a company, you basically form a company in one state and it's basically a company across the country. In the US, it doesn't work that way. You form a company in a state, and then you need to obtain what is called a certificate of authority to do business in the other states. So obviously, if you operate in all 50 states, you need to keep getting these certificates, which are, in that sense, expensive. But just forming a company in one state is pretty fast. So that's the only big difference between India and the US, which an entrepreneur needs to understand. And by the way, I'm a chartered accountant in India and a CPA in the US, so I understand both the regulations in India and in the US. That's why I'm just kind of giving you a distinction. And also one of the things which I've tried to put together in all these slides, just to give you an idea, is I've try to highlight some of the major issues which most entrepreneurs come across from our experience. So there are some do's and don'ts, and I'll just go through them as I speak. Some of the questions is like, do I need to have a subsidiary? Do I set up a branch? What is it that I need to do? My advice to entrepreneurs from India or companies from India is that, there are two issues basically. The difference between a branch and a subsidiary is, as a branch, it doesn't have a separate legal status in the US. It's just a certificate of authority to do business in the US. So, when from an accounting point of view, you can consolidate your top line and the bottom line in India. But the most significant thing between a branch and a subsidiary, which most people need to understand when they decide this option, is a branch exposes the parent company in the US. So what I mean by that is the legal issue. If a customer or somebody in the US sues the branch, and in America they sue for in the fall of a brick, then the Indian company or the Indian parent company also gets sued simultaneously. So that's a huge exposure which you need to kind of understand before deciding about a branch versus a subsidiary. A subsidiary is a separate legal entity, so the legal problems are confined to that subsidiary as opposed to the parent company. So that's the basic distinction. Then there are something called transfer pricing issues. Again, that's a day-long sort of a topic, but I just wanted to highlight this. Transfer pricing basically is what's called an arm's length transaction between two related parties. And that becomes fairly significant because India has become very, very tight, especially the income tax authorities on transfer pricing. And in the US as well, there is a very significant amount of resources being put by the IRS, which is the income tax authority, to to track whether there is under invoicing or over invoicing in terms of transfer in terms of companies billing, and this can actually distort the financials of companies. So transfer pricing is a very large issue which you should be aware of. The next thing is that if it's a subsidiary, what type of a company do you form? There are three types of companies basically: a C corp, an S corp, and an LLC. An S corp and an LLC basically are pass-through transactions, and these are unique things which are there in the US, which is not there in India. Where the last two, that is the S corp and the LLC, don't pay taxes as a company, and it flows through to the shareholders and they pay taxes. But unfortunately, a S corp and LLC is not open for non-US residents or non-US citizens. The only company that you can technically form is what is called a C corporation, which is not a very tax efficient structure, because you end up paying taxes at the company level, and the dividend which gets distributed by the company will also get taxed at the individual level. In India, dividend, by the way, is not taxable, but in the US it is. So that's one of the things which you need to be aware of. Some of the other issues is, where do I register? Where do I set up the operations? Do I need to have a physical office? Do I need to have a virtual office? These are all considerations that you need to kind of keep in mind when trying to set up an operation in the US. The US as a place for business is pretty easy, but you got to follow the rules. And in the US, if you don't really follow the rules, it can get very, very expensive. In terms of the cost of doing business, in terms of penalty and interest and so on and so forth. So that's something you need to keep in mind. In terms of just a snippet note on the registered state versus the state of operations. Once you decide that you want to come into the US, you have to see where your customer is. Where is the opportunity? And it is typically that state that you would register. Because I said, you can't register in all 50 states. You can only register in one specific state. So you have to decide which is that state. Typically, in our experience, what we've seen is most companies register the company in Delaware, which is very, very business-friendly state, as opposed to other states like California, Texas, which are very expensive, very cumbersome in terms of managing a company over a period of time. So that's some of the things which you need to kind of keep in mind. Physical office, virtual office. You don't need to have a physical office in the US in order to operate in the US. You can have a virtual office concept, which is basically a third-party company providing you their office space on a need basis, and giving their address as your address of the company. So those are some of the very cost-effective things that you can do in the US sitting in India, by the way. You don't need to necessarily, and one of the main things about starting business in the US, you don't necessarily need to be there or go there in order to start open a company. I'm just highlighting some of the things which you should keep in mind. Have a business plan. Be very clear of where you want to take this company in the US. Don't just go as a knee-jerk reaction that you need to form a company there. Great, you form a company there, but have a very clear business plan only for that company or that branch. Don't try to integrate it with your overall strategy, because it's necessary to be looking at it with the microscope, that country, as opposed to kind of looking at it in a macro fashion. There are things like, there are tax returns, there are corporate tax returns, there are state tax returns, which are different. In India, you just have one tax return, but in the US, you have the federal tax return, you have the state tax returns, you have sales tax, all these things to kind of comply with. Fortunately, you don't have VAT in the US, unlike in Europe and in India. So that's one of the good things. There are a lot of regulatory filings that you need to do as a company, but that's typically once a year. And again, it's state specific. Each state has a different way of doing it. Other small issues which you need to kind of, I wouldn't say small, they're major issues, because opening a bank account, actually, I just kind of want to highlight about the fact about opening a bank account. It seems to be pretty straightforward. It's, it's once you have a company, you would have a bank account. opening a bank account is the only thing which is kind of time consuming and to a certain extent cumbersome, which is not an incorporation process, but it's after the incorporation process. Most of the banks have this KYC concept like in India, but they are more stricter in the US because of the after the 9/11 incident, banks have become very strict because there's something called a Patriot Act in the US, and the Patriot Act demands that they see the customer physically before they open the bank account. So earlier you could sit in India and open the bank account, but now you have to be there to sign the papers when you actually the first time you open the bank account. Then you can do everything online, but the first time you need to physically be there to sign the papers. So that's going to be a challenge if you're hoping to just do everything out of India without necessarily stepping foot in the US. In terms of hiring employees, you need to understand what the rules and regulations in that state are, because each state has a different rules and regulations. Insurance is a very important aspect that you should focus on because, as I said, they sue you at the fall of a brick, and you need to have certain insurances which are not which are mandatory from a state point of view for if you hire employees, and then there are things which are optional, but an error and omission policy. So many of these customers in the US will expect you to have that policy before they become your customer. And I'm talking of large projects where which is security related and software related projects. Many of the big companies and banks will expect you to have what's called an E&O policy. So God forbid if you or one of your employees makes a mistake or an issue, or sorry, a problem, they can get the money out of from the insurance company for the problem that's been caused by you. Dissolving a company is pretty straightforward. You pay your taxes, you pay all your fees and everything, and you can dissolve the company. It's not cumbersome, it's not difficult the way it is in India to close a company. So this is, I know I kind of spoke fast, but I just thought I'll cover all the topics and then probably have a Q&A session if anybody is interested in asking any questions. So, okay.
You're a chartered accountant both in India and US. What's the
Right.
difference you find?
VAT, for us, I mean, first of all, we've not had VAT, so I can't even speak about VAT in the US. But the little I know about VAT in India, I mean, I have a lot of chartered accountant friends, and most of them kind of crib about the fact that there is VAT. I mean, of course, they make money out of it, but that apart, most of their customers apparently don't necessarily prefer VAT because VAT is kind of, to a certain extent, replacing the excise duty and other things which were there earlier. And now it's, it's in it's kind of turned out to be what's called VAT now. In the US, it's pretty, you have excise duty, by the way, in the US, but it's a more structured manner. I mean, it's kind of difficult to answer that question comparing the, having VAT in India and not having VAT in the US. It's a little more, I would say honestly, a little more complicated than trying to compare both of these. But one of the main things I found in US, I mean, just not talking about VAT, but in general in tax structure, the tax codes are pretty well written. They are well defined, and the most important thing is they don't change constantly. So you as a business owner sitting in India can plan your business in the US without really having to apply too much of assumptions. In India, things change every 2 years, 1 year.
Every year
Yeah,
after the
every year.
budget.
Yeah, so the budget changes the whole thing. In the US, predominantly, although they make a lot of issues about the fact that it's complicated, I would say, I mean, my experience working in India and in the US, definitely the US is a little more, or much more well structured and well thought of tax structure in the US as opposed to India. India is a little more complicated. Let me answer it a little differently. Using TiE New York as kind of the platform, what I have seen in TiE New York, for example, although Silicon Valley obviously dominates the startup culture in America, you have New York, for example, having one of the most vibrant tech startup. I'm talking of a technology startup in the US, and I think this year I believe they have outpaced Silicon Valley in terms of the growth of startups if you compare it with the previous year. And so I mean, it's not necessarily only Silicon Valley which is got that, I mean, startup culture, it has actually picked up quite a bit in the East Coast. And New York is one of the hottest properties because the advantage with New York as opposed to Silicon Valley is the money lies in New York. All the money, wealth, everything is concentrated in New York. So it was pretty obvious that you have technology and the startup culture also coming in from New York. And the last couple of years has been phenomenal for New York City and the peripheral areas. Boston is another great place for. Boston is more from I would say healthcare related technology. That is what I have seen in my experience. So it's not necessarily only Silicon Valley, which is the hottest property. Coming towards a virtual office, I would certainly, if you're a small company, don't have a very high budget and don't necessarily have a requirement to hire employees immediately, a virtual office makes a lot of sense. The customer in the US is not finicky as in India, where this is a big difference. Although I come from India, but I've lived in the US, I find a huge cultural difference. I mean, I'll give you an example. I come once or twice a year to India to meet some of my clients, and some of my American customers ask me, why do you keep going to India every once or twice a year? I said, no, I'm going to meet my customers. So he said, if they're already your customers, why do you need to go and meet them? Why can't you do everything on phone, Skype, WebEx and other things? And I said, India is not like that. India, they love to meet, love to talk, and they just want to see you physically. And in the US, I mean, I've had customers whom I've actually not seen for maybe 5-6 years. And I do business with them. I've got new customers where I've never seen them for the first maybe year, 6 months, something like that. So the culture there in the US is very different. So coming to your point, having a virtual office with no real presence in terms of employees is perfect, because the customer doesn't really care whether you're sitting in that virtual office. And virtual office is a very standard concept in America. It's not an unknown concept. And customers won't mind the fact that you have a virtual office. Let me put it that way. You don't have to hide that at all. Why did they ask you about having, investing money and employees? Because obviously the economy is in doldrums in the US. It's just coming out of it. And if you're applying for a visa, that's when, money and job opportunities and other things come up. But if you're not really hiring people initially, you don't need to, you invest in the sense, you just invest in whatever you're doing in terms of incorporating a company and just doing the basic setup. But otherwise, unless you plan to have an office, physical office, employees and other marketing and other things, that's where you can spend money more on sales and marketing, not on the back office. And that's what we as a company, we tell all our Indian customers that, we will manage your back office in the US, whether from incorporation to accounting to payroll to taxes, all the compliance we do for you, and you can be sitting in India. You don't have to go have an office. In fact, I actually have a lot of customers who don't even have a physical office there. And they do business. Venki is one of them. He doesn't even have an office there, but he's doing business. He doesn't have to have employees. He doesn't have employees. So, that's pretty common there. If you have any income, you pay taxes. Right. Right. No, it's a carried forward loss, right? Because you have expenses and no income, so it's a loss. So you just carry forward till the time you make money. Yeah. So it's just like India, no difference.
Is there any time limit for carrying forward the losses?
It is. There are certain losses which can be carried forward indefinitely, and there are certain things which are time bound, basically. So it's not, it's not one straight answer for. Right. It depends on the type of loss. Yeah.
Shall we wrap up? Oh,
yes, sir.
We have one.
Right. When you say you have a company, you have an account, means you have a personal bank account? No, you can't. You can't. I mean, you can. I mean, if you come to the U.S. and you can open up a bank account, but sitting here converting a personal bank account to a company bank account, no, it can't happen. They won't do it for you. So that's what I'm saying. The KYC norms are extremely strict in U.S. I mean, I know it's strict in India, but U.S. is much more. They won't move any paper until and unless they see you. The person who's signing has to be physically present there to sign. And I've tried my best talking to almost up to the CEO level of a bank. They just don't budge, you know. They, I think, believe in seeing is believing, I guess. So that's what their thought process is, you know. Yeah. I'm sorry. Well, I mean, I don't think I'm qualified to talk about patents, but yeah, I mean, if you have a product which you think is patentable, you know, you have. But see, the problem with patents, I can just tell you in general, the process of getting a patent is a very, very expensive process. Okay, patent lawyers will cost you $500, $700 an hour, and the process can, and there are certain fixed costs as well. So unless the product is so unique and you think it is unique and it is something which you can really generate a lot of revenue out of it, then, you know, I would look at patent or patenting the you know, the product or the service. But otherwise, I mean, I can just give you a general answer on that. It's a pretty expensive process, you know, and there are specialist lawyers who only do patents, basically, you know. But again, yeah, you can sit in India and do that. I mean, if you think you have a patent which you want to patent in the US market, sure, you can do it. And some of them are time consuming, but not as time consuming as in India. That I can tell you. It's a much more transparent process.
Yeah, things are done. Thank you so much. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Damodar Avanur for chairing this session and also the speakers. And if I could request you to please hand over the memento to the speakers. Mr. Balaji Chakravarti, please receive your memento. Ms. Radhika Menon. And finally, Mr. Prakash Iyer. Well, that was the end of the sessions of the first day of TiECon 2013 here on Track 6. Thank you so much for joining us.